Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to this meaningful conversation, which we do every month. It's sponsored by Living Healthy List, and we talk about topics that really make sense in our lives. These topics are, we talk about health, we talk about wellness, which are two totally different things. We talk about personal growth, and we talk about, this one's important, bringing more fun into life. Right? Because if you're doing all of the things you're supposed to do, right, what's the point if you're not enjoying life? So we want everyone to join us every month for meaningful conversations and really explore the possibilities, all the things that you could be doing, or all these great things that are out there. There's so many books, there's so many people that we can follow, but sometimes you need to actually connect with someone. And that is really what we're doing here at Meaningful Conversations. Each month we bring in, I bring in two different panelists, sometimes three panelists, to start the conversation about whatever the topic of the month is. And so this month we are talking about, I love this topic, Restful Rejuvenation, empowering midlife women, hey, that's me, through the beauty of sleep. So we'll touch on things like, what are the unique sleep needs that we have? Because it's different now in our 50s than it was in our 20s. What's the connection between sleep and emotional well-being, emotional eating? Maybe we'll talk about, I'm expecting that we'll talk about some techniques to overcome some of the challenges. And truly, sleep is not something that I struggle with on a regular basis, but ironically, the last 2 nights I have not slept well. So maybe we can get down into some kind of figure out what's going on there and help me to get some sleep the next few nights. So truly what I love about bringing experts in, and for those of you who don't know me, I'm Denise Stiegel. I'm the curator at Living Healthy List and the Healthy Living Liaison. I love to be able to connect women, hence liaison, with the healthy lifestyle that they are looking for. As we know, it's different now than it was years ago, and it's going to be changing. I get that. It changes all the time, but we have to find what works for us. And so our two experts today, they bring their own unique approach and background, so they can guide you in a different way than I can. And what I love about this is it really is a collaboration. These chats can change your life. Now, if you're here live, please feel free to raise your hand, ask questions. If you have comments, we certainly will like to have you join in as well. And so I'm going to just introduce my two panelists, and then what I'll do is I'll actually have them tell you a little bit more about who they are, because reading a bio is one thing, but really hearing it from them and hearing their stories, where they came from and why they do what they do and who they work with, I think is really, really powerful. So our two panelists today are Andrea Caprio and Raewyn Guerrero. And they come to us from two totally different sides of the world. I seem to be in the middle here in the Midwest. So I'd like to welcome both of you. Hello, Raewyn. Hello, Andrea.
Hi, everyone. Good to see you here. So many people here. And Denise, thank you so much for making this possible. I'm really happy to be here.
Oh, absolutely. It's great to reconnect. That's kind of the beauty of Zoom, really. And so much of what we're doing online is we can be wherever we are in the world and still connect. So Andrea, if you would, since your name starts with A, we're gonna go that route.
Great.
If you would tell our audience who you are, where you are, and really what you do and how you got to become the person you are today.
Great, thanks. So my name is Andrea Caprio. As you hear, there is some Italian in there. So I'm actually married to an Italian. I'm German myself. I have lived in many, many, many countries, too many to count here, and was living at one stage in Miami, where I became a master certified transformational nutrition coach. So basically, through my own health history, I became very curious about eating healthy, living healthier life. I made a lot of changes in my own life in terms of eating, and then realized how much actually the right food and the right lifestyle impacted on my own health. So literally, I was able to overcome many of my issues. I had some hormonal issues, like fibroids that everybody wanted to remove. I mean, I speak everybody, doctors who wanted to remove that. I had weekly migraines. I had weight issues. I was always tired. I had digestive issues like bloating and all kind of things. So I was really not really sick, but not healthy either, right? And things were just getting worse and worse. And can those who are not speaking put themselves on mute, maybe?
Right, you can, if you're not speaking, you would
Thanks.
mute. Here we go.
Great. So I improved really my health, and that's what made me curious. And when I realized how much I improved my own health, for example, I had no hormonal issues anymore after once I started eating healthy. My weekly migraines disappeared, and maybe now it's like 2-3 times a year only. I have almost never bloating. My weight is perfect, and I feel just amazing, really. And I'm now, Denise, we discussed earlier, right? I'm now in my middle-aged, or whatever you want to call it, right? And I'm still doing well. You know, I'm now in the menopause age, had almost no issues. So it's really doing well. And anyway, when I, realized how much that improved my own life, I really wanted to help other people. And that's when I started studying and specializing in weight loss, emotional eating, but also other specializations like gut health, hormonal health, diabetes, autoimmune diseases, and a few other things, emotional health a lot as well. And yes, and that's over 7 years ago. So I have my practice. I'm working fully online now. I have different programs, different ways of working. I'm sure I mentioned one or two later on here. And yes, I'm happy to share my knowledge as much as I can, that of things that I help my clients with, things I experienced with my clients or my clients have experienced, and of course my own.
Wonderful, thank you. I'm so excited that you're here today.
Me too.
So now Raewyn, she is going to, if you would just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you are, and how you help your clients, please.
Thanks, Denise and Andrea. So many parallels. Recently just went through the whole wanting to remove the fibroids thing with the doctors. So, but did it myself, gave myself 3 months and got rid of them naturally without having to have surgery or any of those things. I actually got triple vaccinated last year in order to be able to enter the United States because I was living in the UK. My husband is American. And in order to enter the US, I ended up having to get these vaccines. And very short, within 2 weeks of that, like all my problems sort of began. Prior to that, I'd been in pink of health for about 7 years. I'd had 7 really, really good years. And then last year, September 2022, things went really south, and I've been on a journey on learning what to do to get my hormones back into balance, to detox from heavy metals, from stuff that I never had any issues with prior to being triple vaccinated, all in one day, by the way. So I'm Raewyn, I'm the Gutsy Executive Coach. I grew up in Trinidad, a small island in the Southern Caribbean, moved to the UK when I was 22 with 800 pounds to my name, slept on couches, studied for a psychology degree while working 3 jobs, and then worked in a Pilates studio, a rehab studio, because I'd had scoliosis when I was a little girl, and I wore a brace from when I was 12 until I was 17, which is a pretty terrible time for anyone to be wearing a brace, a young woman developing. It was kind of rough, and was bullied a lot at school. And that's why I wanted to help people, because I realized that, people suffer when other people when they get rejected, when they're abandoned because of the way that they look or the way that they feel. And then by the time I hit England, and, there was a lot of, I think just a lot of like fighting to survive. There was a lot of survival that just kicked in because I wanted to make my own way in the world without being dependent on my family. I come from a massive Caribbean family. Like if you think of that movie, The Big Fat Greek Wedding, like that's pretty much my entire family, like huge. My dad has 7 sisters. There were 5 of us growing up. I'm the first of 5 kids, and we were always sick. My mom believed in doctors so much. Like, she loved going to doctors. So anytime we were sick, she took us to the doctor, and what they would do was give us lots of antibiotics. And by the time I was like 13 and I started getting my periods, my migraines kicked in. My periods were pretty painful and quite horrible. And, you know, fast forward to when I hit my 30s and I got my diagnosis of IBS and anxiety, and the gastroenterologist looks at me and she says, well, there's nothing structurally wrong with you. It must be in your head. And I thought, bullshit. I hope I can say that. Shit, that is a bull. I'm like, there's nothing I can do. Like, what? It's in my head. You want me to see it? Like, and I had studied psychology. So I'm like, lady, this is not, and I'm not making up the debilitating cramps and pain and the cold sweating every morning when I have to go to the bathroom. Like, this is not imagined. Okay. And she's like, you must be in a really stressful job. You should think about like changing your job. And I'm like, that's not it. Like, I had loved my job at the time. I was the head of well-being for a bank in central London. I was having the time of my life designing well-being programs for people, for corporate. And this was holding me back. It was really getting in the way of my life because, you know, you're late to work. And this is before everybody worked online, right? This is like 2006 to 2016. So everyone was still having to commute into work. It took me like an hour to do that. And the thought of getting on a train for an hour with not knowing where a bathroom was petrifying to me. So it would take, I would go into work late just so that I know that I could get in easier and quicker than trying to rush in with everybody at 7 a.m. So I'd get in for 10. And of course they were like, what's wrong with you? Like, what is going on? Why are you here at 10 a.m.? I'm like, oh, bathroom emergency. And it became so debilitating. And eventually I burnt out because your adrenals start to tank when you're under that amount of stress. So I had to, you know, fast forward to 2017, and functional medicine saved my life. I retrained in functional medicine. I'm now a functional medicine certified health coach and a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner. I also have a background, as I mentioned, in psychology and CBT and hypnosis. So I started off by helping clients with actually reprogramming their subconscious minds, reframing the way that they would look at negative events and some of their like early triggers, and helping them like not be angry, not be flying off the handle. But everything that I've learned since then is that there's this two-way relationship between the body and the brain, so that you can't only work on mindset without addressing all the other things that might be going on with the body. And especially now that I'm going through this stuff with the whole vaccination thing, the post-vaccination thing, the heavy metals, they can gunk up your liver, they can make you very toxic, can make you very explosive and emotional. And I've seen that a lot. Like, my mood has like shifted, and I've been doing so much work on trying to get back to my old self, because I was this really happy, bubbly, vibrant person. And every now and then I can just feel myself just like my fuse is going to snap. And there's a lot to do with liver congestion there. So I started off really focused on the gut and the brain because of IBS, but now I'm in this whole other phase where I'm like, okay, let's learn about all these other systems that impact your emotions and your mood and your hormones, because the liver is where a lot of these hormones are being metabolized, where they're being converted, where they should be, some of them should be excreted if they're toxic. Like, if you've got the wrong kind of estrogen, your liver needs to be working in order for you to clear it out of the body. But if it's backed up because of all the other toxins that you're dealing with, you can end up with some of these really gnarly symptoms like mood swings, depression, crappy skin. You know, that's also another big telltale sign if you start getting certain types of acne at certain points around your body. So I figure like God has put me where I'm at right now so that I can be like, okay, now you can actually help more people, because you were helping them before, but now you're learning about this through experience, like, which is the best teacher. And now you can actually help more people doing that. So I'm like Andrea, I have worked 100% online from day one, from 2017, when I quit corporate and I started off on my own. And I have helped about 400 women so far in the last 5 years, 6 years. My gosh, yeah, it's flying by. This year is like flying by too. So, and I'm still committed to doing that. And I work one-to-ones, I work in groups, which is sometimes a much more affordable option. And I also have the option, if people want to come out to Southern California and stay with me for 2 days, they can do that in an immersion retreat format. And I'll teach them how to eat. We have purified water here, distill a reverse osmosis filter on the whole house. So it's like clean air, clean water. We're out in the country, in the mountains, far away from chemicals and
all of
the
the
things.
stuff that we have in kind of our regular homes. And of course, what both Andrea and Raewyn, when we talk about these health issues, dietary, IBS, and my mom, Raewyn, has struggled with IBS for years. And she takes medication, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And I think what's really important is both of, and we I think all of us are where we are today, or at least the three of us are all here today because of our own health journey.
Yeah.
And of course, both, our main topic today is sleep. But we also know that all of the things that both Andrea and Raewyn are talking about affect our sleep. So Andrea, I'd like to bring you in and kind of talk to us a little bit about, when you're working with clients, and, we talk about diet and what we're eating and how that affects, that can affect us, emotionally, and how that can affect our sleep.
So I love, of course, going deep into, and by the way, Raewyn, it was very interesting to hear your story. Thanks for sharing so much in detail, because there are indeed a lot of parallels. And like you, I work also in a very functional way, of course, and in a very holistic way. And that brings us to the sleep, because I personally believe that sleep is really interacting, or it's both ways, right? And it becomes often a vicious circle, where when your sleep is not right, it affects other areas of your life, right? So you will not be able to focus, you will be more stressed, and that then might lead, for example, to things like overeating. But now when you overeat, then that will affect your sleep, right? So very often we find ourselves in this vicious circle, and I've really found that with myself, of course. Denise, also, you just said you have some issues around sleep in the last few days. Maybe there's something, right, where, there's some imbalance or so. So very often sleep, not to forget, is, of course, based on our hormone balance as well. And I believe that plays a very big role, right? Because in our body, we have plenty of different hormones. Obviously, we have plenty of different organs and so on and so on. But the hormones are all working together. Like, they're like a piece of chain in the chain. And if one of these hormones is somehow not functioning properly for whatever reason, it will have an effect on others. Now, we have one sleep hormone called melatonin. So if for whatever reason our melatonin levels are not working in the correct way, it will affect our other hormones. So that can have an effect on our on our sexual hormones. It can have an effect on our satiety and our hunger hormones, leptin and ghrelin, respectively, right? And that we suddenly eat more. It can affect, of course, our stress levels, right? Our cortisol or so, because they work very much in. So all these things work really together. So I think that's really, really important to keep that in mind. And especially I believe in looking at the root cause of your issues, whatever they are, right? No matter if it's a health issue, if it's a lifestyle issue like sleep or so, if it's a weight issue or so, we always want to look at the root cause and looking obviously into the correlation of those different parts.
Absolutely. And Raewyn, I know with what you do, especially with, functional medicine and testing, I think that is such an important piece that so many women we just don't know about. I've been really fortunate in the last year when I really started dealing with menopausal issues, that through somebody I knew, I was introduced to somebody who did a Dutch test. And that has been really helpful. So I would love to hear a little bit about how, when working with clients, how does the testing help to kind of really show people this is what's going on in your body, and this could be why your sleep is off. Obviously, a lot of this is going to correlate to what Andrea was just saying, but let's bring in that scientific piece, if you will.
Yeah, I would love to. Well, one thing that I do want to touch on that Andrea mentioned, like your melatonin levels, as you get older, they start to decrease, right? So it becomes harder to sleep because you don't have enough of those melatonin stores. And it's quite a neuroprotective hormone as well, and an immune protective hormone. So it's like that, it takes care of your sleep, it looks after your immunity, it kind of cleans up all the debris in the body after a long day. So when you don't have enough of those levels, or if they're not in the right amount, the body can start to struggle a little bit, which is why it's so important for us to kind of prioritize good sleep and ways to help melatonin production. So I can jump into that in a little bit and I'll answer your question now, okay? And so in terms of the functional testing, what I love about it, and which is what worked for me, because I had seen traditional doctors, I had seen specialists, and they did blood work. My gastroenterologist actually did like a scan, an endoscopy, some of the other things that the traditional doctors do. They like to look with cameras to see if there's something going on. And they're like, okay, there's a perforation, like you got an ulcer or you have a polyp or something like that. And then they want to prescribe either a medication or surgery. But the functional way is looking at where the links in the chain of all these different systems in your body are not necessarily working. And I liken it to like looking for an intruder in your house. And you wouldn't only look in one room of your house for an intruder. So let's say, and if we think about the gut, I always say like, this is just because the gut you've got gut symptoms doesn't mean that the gut is the problem. The symptoms are never really the problem. They are the result of the problem. Mm-hmm. So there's something in the environment, something that you have been maybe consuming. With me, it was a lot of antibiotics over several years that basically destroyed my gut microbiome. And it made me susceptible to parasites and all sorts of other things that can cause damage. So the testing helps you get an understanding of what's going on with that specific person. So when we look at someone who's got gut issues, we don't only look at just the gut test. We will look at a cortisol test, a saliva test. We'll look at a mucosal barrier assessment. We'll look to see what the epithelial lining of the gut is like. We'll look at how well the liver is functioning, something called a metabolic wellness panel. And that will tell us, like, are you breaking protein down well, or is the liver all congested and backed up and you're not absorbing protein? So we will look at things like all of the links in that detoxification chain. We will look at the levels of cortisol. So that's a stress hormone, right? So we'll look at cortisol levels. We'll look at its counterbalancer or counterregulator called DHEA, which is if you're producing like too much cortisol, but you don't have enough DHEA to keep up, you can end up in this place of feeling burnt out. So we look at all these different factors through saliva, through urine, through stool. Yes, through stool. We send it to your house. We send you the test kits, and then you mail it back via courier to the labs. And then we sit down for like 2 hours and go through your review with you and create a plan based off of what we've seen from the findings, as opposed to take this pill. And the plan, we call it in functional diagnostic nutrition, it's called the D.R.E.S.S for health success. And D.R.E.S.S stands for diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction, and supplementation. And because it's going to be it's a framework, but it can be tailored and customized to every single person based off of what comes out of those findings. And the order in which we do certain things, particularly around supplements, a lot of people like, oh, I've been taking like really good supplements from Whole Foods or from Sprouts or whatever. And I'm like, let me do a review of what you're doing and let's see if they're actually helping you or not, because obviously you're here to talk to me because you're still not feeling great, right? So, when we do like a review of supplements, I can see that even though you might be getting good quality supplements, you're probably not using them when you should be. There is a certain cadence and an order to things that, requires a bit of an expert eye and support and guidance around it. And timing, like there are different phases of when you should be doing different things. So if you're taking like 15 supplements, like, oh my gosh, your poor liver. There are things that we can do for us to check and figure out, like, do you actually need that right now? Like I would always check someone's vitamin D levels before saying, let's put you on and same for vitamin B. I would check those things before being like, oh, start going on to these supplements and just taking them, for however long. Like if you see a doctor or a therapist or a practitioner who's got you on a product or, whether that's a drug or a supplement indefinitely, that's never a good sign. Right? They need to be able to say, look, we're going to do something targeted. It's going to be this, and we're going to be supporting you and supporting the body to heal itself, because ultimately that's what we know, we've seen. I mean, if you look at your finger, if you cut your finger today, right? Let's say you put a pin in it or something and it bleeds temporarily. instantly it starts knitting back together, because the body's entire job is to restore and rejuvenate itself. Now, if you're in the wrong environment, let's say you are in a stressful working relationship, a stressful marriage, you're breathing crappy air, you're living in a city, it's toxic, your air is not great, your water is not great, what do you expect is going to happen to you? You know, like, are you gonna, I always say, like, you know, if you put a rose in a desert, is the rose going to bloom? It's not going to do that, because it doesn't have the right conditions in order for it to do so. So you want to create the right conditions for your body to do its job. And that might mean exiting from the toxic job. You might not do it overnight. Like, it might take you 2 or 3 years. For me, it took me about 2 years to plan my exit, to save the money, to get all the things in place that needed to happen for me to walk away. But, you know, and same thing with a marriage, like, you might not need to leave immediately, or you might work on counseling, but you have to look at all the other contributors on why your body's in a weakened state, and why foods are making you react to things, on why your sleep is disrupted. You know, is it the air in your house? Is there mold in your environment? Like, are there things that are compounding the effects of being alive, that are making it hard for your body to do what it's supposed to do? And then you start working on removing those, what we call those hidden stressors. And hidden is another acronym. It's hormones, immune system, digestion, detoxification, endocrine, and nervous system. So hidden stands for the hidden stressors, is what we investigate as functional practitioners. And like I said, we do that through urine, saliva, stool, sometimes blood. Like, when I do a food sensitivity test, there's usually a blood draw involved. Depending on where you are in the world, if you're in Europe, we just do like a finger stick test. So you just blot onto some paper. But in the US, we'll do like a venous puncture. So we'll send you to a lab that can do that. And they're locators for finding those things. And we'll find out what foods you're sensitive to, because believe it or not, that can really, be a big contributor, because you might be eating really healthy foods, but they might be things that don't really agree with you. Like, for me, I was eating a lot of broccoli and cauliflower and Brussels sprouts and bananas and pears, and they were all things that showed up on my list. So I'm like, oh wait, those are things I'm not supposed to eat. Like, they're healthy, but they're not healthy for me at that moment in time. And this is another thing
that you bring it up, a very good point. And I know I talk about this a lot. It's that individualized, I always say a healthy lifestyle that works for you. And
for
so
you.
Yes, so important. I want to just open this up real quick, just based on what we've talked about thus far. I just want to open up and ask our audience, or see if our audience has any questions, comments right now at this point. And if not, no big deal. I just always want to open that up, because I hate when you wait till the end and you're like, oh yeah, I had a question like 20 minutes ago, but now I don't remember, or it's either I don't remember it or it's not relevant anymore. So thoughts, questions, anyone?
Raise your hand if you got one.
Or otherwise, you can also type them in the chat, and we can always
Lily's got one.
reply them
Hi,
as they
Lynn.
come.
Hey, Lily.
Hi, Lynn. Good to see you.
Hi.
Oh, Lynn. Hi, Lynn.
Hi. So, Raewyn, say again what HIDDEN was the acronym for. Hormones, immune, detox.
Yeah, detox, digestion, endocrine, and the nervous system.
And at the end, I'll actually ask you to do the same with diet, so we can make sure that we have that in the show notes.
I'm going to pop it in here, actually.
Even better, then it'll be saved in the.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question for Raewyn. That surprises me, that those cruciferous vegetables that we hear so much about were not good for you. What were they doing to you? How were you not digesting?
So I was digesting them, but they were creating goiters. So I ended up with like nodules on my thyroid. Now, there's a lot of reasons behind this too. So there's tons of layers to my onion. I've got some amalgam fillings that definitely are playing a part. So, I mentioned the heavy metals, and for a long time I've thought, oh, they're not bugging me, but when the vaccinations happened, like all these things kind of flared up all at the same time. So it was like, okay, my bucket got full and it tipped over. So I definitely had some toxic burden, some environmental toxic burden, just from having the amalgams in my mouth. So I'm actually getting them removed in like 5 weeks, and I cannot wait, because I'm like, all right, that's going to solve a ton of problems, because I think like when I got the vaccinations, that was just like the extra that just made life really, really tricky. And I don't feel like I was I wasn't reactive in a gut way to those foods because I ate those foods on a regular basis and I had no gut symptoms. But the fact that my thyroid was enlarged and I started having these little nodules, that was a clue.
Interesting.
Mhm.
It is.
Andrea?
And often I think, sorry, I want to add, often it is also, I've noticed with my clients, is foods we eat a lot of, we might be actually intolerant to. So it's definitely something to check. I see that I work a lot with emotional eaters, so people who eat certain type of foods, and a lot of them, binge eaters and so on. But, also if they're not, same thing. So it's definitely worth checking because like Raewyn said, sometimes it's just the little, drop that makes the glass overflow, and you might have had other issues already without noticing, but that then just spirals it up.
What are the vaccines that you had to get to come to the US? I used to travel a lot as a professional figure skater. So I know going to South America, I had to get vaccines, but then I did a recent trip. We didn't have to get vaccinated. So what did you have to get?
So you have to get the COVID vaccine. And you also, for me, I had my MMR, which I know that I had boosters for, but because I'd come from a different country, the UK didn't have any of my records. So they made me redo the MMR. I think a tetanus shot, which I'd also had like a booster for when I was in my 20s, because right before I went to university, I had all of these things, but I had them in Trinidad. The doctor that I got them from, he was no longer in practice. He didn't keep, digital records. It's an island. Everything was paper. He went out of business. So like, they had no records of any of my previous vaccines. So they're like, okay, all at once, here you go. So,
Yeah, and those are
yeah,
things that
literally all at
normally-
once. Yeah, usually you're supposed to stagger them, but it happened like all at once. So it was a little bit, I know, look at Andrea's face. She's just like, what? Yeah. So I've been I'm finally starting to come back to life. Like the last month has been probably one of the first good months that I've had. I've been working, but I'm really grateful that I have a business that I can work from anywhere. I can set my own hours and do those things. But yeah, like the energy that I used to have prior to this, like I used to spin and run and do all kinds of fun things, and I couldn't do it. I was like, getting on a bike for 45 minutes just sounded like hell,
That actually, just thinking about that, since I haven't done it in a while, hurts my tush. Biking for that long.
Right.
So both of you have lived in Europe, and I think the rest of us are here in the US. Andrea, let's talk a little bit then about, foods are very different in Europe than they are here in the US. And that has got to be affecting our gut, our health, our sleep. Because I always want to pull the sleep back in. And then, at some point, let's talk about like, what can we do to really start, positively affecting our sleep. But before that, let's go back to that question, Andrea, about the food, the differences in the foods in the I want to say the UK, in Europe,
in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So I live in Italy, and I lived in Portugal. I'm from Germany, but I have also lived in Miami. So I think and actually when living in the US is what made me become a master certified transformational nutrition coach in the end, because I saw how bad people that I saw there were eating and how unhealthy they were as a result of it. And of course, doing my studies and working all these years also with hundreds of people, mostly women, is really where I saw, what is going on. So when I look at the difference in food, is that in the US, and when I say that, obviously it's the majority, it's not everybody. I mean, I normally don't like, to put everybody into the same drawer, but most people do eat pretty unhealthy and what I would call a very highly processed diet, right? So everything is, not everything, but a lot of foods are processed. There are a lot of different ingredients in, a lot of ingredients nobody knows what they are actually, hidden ingredients, names for for sugar, and people try maybe to avoid sugar, but then there are so many different names, so people actually don't know. So it's just very difficult to find out actually what is there. Whereas in Europe, you can also find that, don't get me wrong. You definitely have also, more fast food, and it's getting worse as well, but it's much less. And it's a quite interesting thing. And Raewyn, having lived in the UK, you can confirm, for example, if you have ketchup, we have the same brand of ketchup. I don't want to name it now. You have the same in the UK. The ingredients list in the US is long like this, yes. And in the UK, it's about long like that, roughly, okay. So there are much less ingredients, and also much less unhealthy ingredients in the UK. And I know now UK is not anymore Europe, but the same, I just know of the specific example, but the same obviously counts for the EU, right? In the EU, even our laws are much stricter than in the UK, and especially than in the US. So what goes in food is far more regulated, to the point that, for example, in the in the EU, sorry, it's almost impossible to get genetically modified foods. Probably it will always be possible, but there is a law that forbids genetically modified foods. Now, the biggest culprit in the US is wheat, in my opinion. Wheat is one of the biggest, or if not the biggest, I don't have the exact statistics now, but one of the biggest foods in terms of also being genetically modified or being very developed, and also having a lot of pesticides. And we go back to what Raewyn mentioned earlier, the whole lead and all the different metals that are in, and so on, the pesticides. I mean, obviously all these things are building up in our body, building up in our gut, overloading the liver, and so on. And all this, of course, affects our health, including our sleep, right? So that's the one thing, that just the amount of ingredients and the quality of ingredients that are included, or the quality of food that is different. I believe in Europe we have cleaner food, less ingredients in our processed foods, in general, less processed foods, less pesticides, or rather, I don't know, I don't want to say better pesticides because I don't like them all, but it's a little bit less heavy than you have it in the US. And so that's the one part of it. And the other part is that our eating culture in Europe is different, right? So we are eating in general, and again, that is changing and depends a little bit on the countries. But like in Italy, I can tell you, and also Germany, I know pretty well, France, I know well. We are just eating far more a Mediterranean type of diet in certain areas, or a little bit more like home cooked meals in other areas, right, where it's maybe a bit colder. But definitely everything will be far more home cooked, natural, wholesome in general here in Europe than it's in the US. And again, the eating culture is again something, our portion sizes are much smaller in general. Now, one very interesting statistic is that in the US, in the last roughly 10 years, the portion sizes in restaurants has increased by 40%. Why? Money. Okay, only thing. So restaurants could bump up the price, saying basically, oh, but our portions are bigger, so obviously I have to charge more, knowing that, making portions a little bit bigger is not 40% obviously of the equation, and they make more profit. So there are a lot of things that come into, and all this, of course, will affect our well-being again. So if we eat more, for example, we go to the restaurant in the evening, we eat a 40% bigger meal, right? And I mean, I was petrified when I arrived in the US. At the time, I came from South Africa. I lived 16 years in South Africa, where, suddenly the prices were huge. I mean, it's super expensive, one, but also the portions. So what I did, I was only eating starters, appetizers, because that was a portion I could actually eat. Whereas a main course, I could never finish. And then you have the add-ons there, the potatoes, the rice, the whatever it is, and just very big portions. And that will affect, and I go back now to the sleep, because that's after all our discussion theme today, that will affect your sleep. I mean, yesterday I just to give you a sample, most of the evenings I eat lighter cuisine, like more maybe a soup or vegetable dishes, small little protein. I believe protein is important. But for example, for sleep, it is more important to have actually some carbohydrates. Not too many, no overly processed. But if you have too much protein, that might be too heavy for your digestive system. And I had a half little hamburger, right? It's really not much. But I was also not sleeping as well as I usually did, right? I was a little bit thirsty. I woke up through the night and so on. And that is something definitely that affects my sleep. If I go out for a bigger dinner, it will affect my sleep. So imagine you're in America and you're eating every day a big dinner. Of course, that affects your sleep.
That's true. And I think we're eating later and later, especially, this time of year in the summertime when it's, the weather's nice, people are out and about, we are eating later. So that's definitely something that we're guilty of in my life. And it's interesting. So I've been married almost 20 years. And the one big change that I had to make when I got married was I always did lunch. I had a bigger lunch than my dinner. My husband's busy all day long, so he looks forward to dinner. So when I first got married, I would have my lunch the way I would eat it and then have a dinner meal with him. And that was really difficult. So I had to kind of learn how to still have dinner and enjoy a meal with him, but also still kind of stay with my own, what worked best for me. So interesting. So I want to ask, we've touched a bit on this a little bit, some of the unique sleep needs that we have as midlife, not quite the, as when it's, whether it's perimenopause, menopause, once you hit 35, it just starts to happen, right? Some people hit, start to notice it earlier. That was me. Some people don't, like my sister, she's like, she doesn't have anything. Which I'm really jealous of, by the way. She doesn't have any kind of symptoms, and I have all of them. But what are the, some of the unique sleep needs that we have? What are some of the things, we talked about, a few of the things that are getting in the way of our sleep. And then, a couple of the techniques, we've kind of touched on some of it, but kind of some of those techniques that we can use to get sleep better. As Andrea mentioned before we went live, I had said to her, the last few days, I've been struggling with sleep. I wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and I'm wide awake. And it doesn't really help if you're, trying to get in a good 8 hours. You're waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning and to be twiddling your thumbs all night. So the questions then are understanding our unique sleep needs and some techniques that we can use.
So I'd love to share on this, because when I trained as a hypnotherapist, one of the first things that I did was help people sleep, because insomnia it's kind of rampant, and a lot of it is because of the way that we're living. So we could talk a little bit about some of the behavioral things that you can do to get better sleep. So you want to be in bed by 10 p.m. in order to be maximizing the quality of sleep that you're getting. And that's regardless of whether you are a night owl or an early bird, like latest lights out 10 p.m. you're asleep, right? Because there's a lot that's going on in the body during that 10 o'clock to 2 a.m. The liver, I love talking about the liver, by the way. It's doing a lot of its cleanup work. The brain's doing a lot of its cleanup work. It's like a washing machine, a washing cycle for the body. So if you're asleep while that's happening, it's going to be maximizing on that, and it's regulating things like your metabolism. So you mentioned ghrelin and leptin. Those things are all being those hormones are all being regulated during that time period. So you want to be asleep by 10 p.m. So that's one of the first things you could do, like just looking at adjusting, well, what time do I go to sleep? If you find that you're struggling to stay asleep, I love the tip about having a small amount of carbohydrates in the evening. It doesn't have to be very close to bed. It can be about 2 to 3 hours before bed. That's probably one of the easiest things. And if you feel like you're okay with it, tiny amount of fat as well can help with getting you to stay asleep. Some of the things that we learned in, is like a hot milky drink before bed. If you're not doing dairy, you can do, because that stimulates tryptophan production, and that's a precursor to melatonin. So you want to like hot milky drink, hot chocolate, cacao. And when I say hot chocolate, not the sugary one, the one that's like cacao, like a pure cacao version, which has got lots of magnesium in it. Now that can be stimulating for some people as well, because there's also some theobromine in it. So you'd have to figure out what's best for you. But a hot milky drink, whether that's an almond milk or a cashew milk or a walnut milk, I would stay away from oat milk because there's a lot of glyphosate in oats, particularly in the US. So oats, wheat, corn, like I would just avoid them in general, those types of grains, because they're so heavily sprayed with pesticides in America. So avoiding that sort, just having like a nut milk or something like that, instead some plant-based milk other than and then dairy. So sleep by 10 p.m. Having a small snack that includes some good fat and some a small carbohydrate as a woman before bed. It doesn't have to be anything excessive, maybe just like some yogurt, like a coconut yogurt or something like that, something really simple, right, with a little spoonful of nut butter. And then the other things that you can do, you could practice some gratitude before you go to bed, have a wind down ritual, turn off your lights at 8 p.m. I have a red light next to my desk. So if I end up working late and I've got a lot of blue light exposure, I'll flip on the red light and work with that instead, because that will help mimic sunset and the body start. And of course, all of this stuff's happening with light impacts your circadian rhythm. So if you've got a red light, the body's thinking, oh, sunset, and it starts producing all the melatonin that it needs, and then you can get to bed. Now, if you don't have a red light, turn off your lights, about 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. Obviously it's late, the sun goes down later now. So, when it gets dark, let it get dark, let the house get dark. Get a little Himalayan salt lamp, like those are sweet as well. They let off a beautiful pink light. And that, again, pink light, amber light, red light, all these different, the colors of sunset, they will help the body start producing the melatonin that it needs in the evenings. Now you can actually do something during the day, like within 5 to 30 minutes of waking up, go outside and let sunlight hit your eyes. Or you could just open your windows if you can't go outside. Open your windows, let sunlight hit your eyes. Spend about 10 to 15, 20 minutes, doing that. If you can walk, even better. Even better for getting your body all regulated and you're grounded with the earth. So just getting back to really, none of this stuff is like expensive. It's all free. You can just go outside, get some light, turn off your lights at night, get a gratitude journal, practice writing in it. I have got one, if anybody's interested. It's written by a friend of mine. It's so beautiful. I'll send you the link to it if you want. Taking probiotics, believe it or not, can actually help with your circadian rhythms. Again, I don't recommend doing them willy-nilly, but there are certain, your gut bacteria plays a huge part in what's going on with things like your hormones and your serotonin and your neurotransmitters, because you've got I think 90% of your serotonin is actually, between 70 to 90% is actually produced in your gut. And tryptophan, like I was mentioning, is a precursor to serotonin, which is a precursor to melatonin. So you've got to tend to that environment within your digestive tract, because that's where pretty much everything is sort of happening in your body. So your neurotransmitters and your hormones and your metabolism, all of that's happening right in the center. So I think I've given you quite a lot to work with. Anybody have anything to add or ask? Andrea.
Yeah, so all the things obviously I wanted to say, so I have my list here, right? And you tick them off as well. So absolutely, we are definitely working in the same way. But I think what's important because we kind of know often what to do, but it doesn't work, right? And I'm huge on habits. So I'm a coach mostly, I'm a coach, and I have found out with my clients that many of them, they do know, they should go to bed at 10 o'clock, but hey, life happens. It doesn't work like that, right? It's difficult. Or we should eat the vegetables, but we end up eating a bag of chips or whatever it is, right? So for me, it's really important to stick to habits and to learn habits. So I have actually developed a program all around, because even when working with my clients one-on-one or my group coaching program, I realized that often, we did, the analysis, we found out, the root causes of the issues we were addressing, but then they were still struggling to implement those healthy habits, stress management habits, sleep, eating, exercise, etc., etc. So for me, it's really important to start with habits. And for example, if you are somebody who struggles with sleep, and you're somebody who goes to bed every day at 2 o'clock, going to bed at 10 o'clock, you're probably going to fail. sorry to tell you this. And Raewyn is absolutely right, but it's all about getting there, right? And to being able to sustain it. Now, what is important there is if you're this person 2 o'clock, right? And I have one interesting client at the moment. I just work about that. She is this kind of 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock person or so. So we started off working backwards. So first of all, when does she need to get up in the morning? So we know, when ideally she should go to bed. So you want to work backwards. But then also we started working on, instead of 2 o'clock, 1:45, then 1:30, then 1:15. So kind of slowly go back. And I call that implementing really small, tiny habits. By the way, Tiny Habits is a book, which I can recommend. It's really great. And with that is, no matter what you want to do, if you want to drink more water, if you want to eat healthy, if you want to start an exercise routine or a sleep routine, really start small. Have small little things that you start. Just 1 glass of water, 15 minutes earlier sleep, 5 minutes of exercise. If you've never exercised, don't try 1 hour every day. You're going to fail. I mean, most likely, at least. So really start that and start implementing those small habits. So for the sleep, you asked earlier as well, Denise, the sleep needs. Ideally, somebody wants to sleep or have a regular sleep of 7 to 9 hours. 7 to 8 is probably where we find ourselves. It depends. Personally, I need my 8 hours. Anything under, I know, is not working for me. 9 hours for me would be too much, can only happen if I'm missing some sleep or so. But you want also to keep it regular. Like Raewyn said, like 10 o'clock should be your time, right? Ideally, we all want to be at 10 o'clock, but it doesn't help to go every time at 10 o'clock and then have your weekends where you go at 4 o'clock, let's say, to bed or so. So try keep it regular, work backwards. And the other thing is, I'm really somebody, as I said, on habits and routines. That's what I have a really great workshop where I teach, how to implement simple and easy habits. So start with small little habits, like, for example, writing a journal is a really great habit, right? Write down the things you want to do next day, because when we have them in our mind, often it keeps us busy the whole night. And we think, oh my goodness, I haven't done this, I haven't done that. And then maybe when you put it down in a journal, it's, there, have a little journal next to your bed and write it down. So whatever helps you to really be in a relaxed state.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I want to just ask again, the group, I know we lost Lynch. I know she had a meeting at the top of the hour. Johanna, Beth, or Jean, if you had a question, comment, would love to hear from you.
Oh, it's been really great information. I really appreciate the detail that both of you are providing, and how everything is so interconnected is really important for people to remember, not, what we put in our mouth and how we take care of our bodies. So this has been really, really super informative.
Awesome.
Thank you, Jean.
If anyone wants, I actually have a hypnosis MP3 that I could share with you. Denise, perhaps I can put the link in here for everyone to grab it, or you can send it out to them afterward.
Absolutely. Put it in in the chat. Also, let us know in the chat how people can connect with you. We want to know about your programs. The beautiful thing about Meaningful Conversations is I don't want it to end here. One of the things I always say, at Living Healthy List, my goal is to help you connect with a healthy lifestyle that works for you. Sometimes I'm the right person to work with. Other times, and this is what I love about Meaningful Conversations, I have other experts who I can rely on, I can refer to. And so today you have the beautiful opportunity to hear Andrea and Raewyn talk about, such an incredible topic. And it is important to, Jean just mentioned, everything is connected. We talk a lot about food and we talk a lot about lifestyle. Well, both of those things affect our sleep in a positive or negative way. And, when you think about when you're 20, when you're in college, you could stay up till all hours of the night, sure, but you could also sleep, all day long, right? And it didn't seem to affect you. But as you started to get into a more normal routine with work and family and kids, that changed quickly. And then I know as we're getting older now, even older now, 20, 30, 50-ish, things are always changing. And I think that's one of the things to really take from this is, like, you know, your body is always changing. And we have experts like Andrea and Raewyn who can help you when you get to a point where, you know, this is not working anymore. I need help. So please always feel free to reach out to our experts. And truly, if you've had, you know, if you've enjoyed this discussion, you know, connect offline, but also tell your friends, you know, we're here the second Tuesday of every month. So our next event is Tuesday, September 12th at 12 p.m. Central Time. I'm in Minnesota, so we always do Central Time. Also, don't forget to subscribe to livinghealthylist.com. For those of you who are on today or who are on today, I will have the first 3 chapters of my book, it's right behind me, Healthy Living, Happy Life. I love to share that. I'm so proud of this. This is an international best-selling book. It even has a little symbol that says so. And the curriculum for my program actually is based on this. And it's all about the practical path to finding the healthy lifestyle that works for you. And as I said, sometimes I'm the person, but sometimes it's someone like Andrea or someone like Raewyn. And that is, to me, that is the beauty of collaboration and of meaningful conversations. So let's see. That is what I have for everyone today. Before we go, anyone else have any thoughts, questions, comments before we go?
Thank you, everybody. That was a lot of information.
Thank you for being here, Johanna. And the replay will be up on Living Healthy List YouTube channel. We did go through a lot, so please pop over there, check it out again, and you know, I think when you go onto YouTube, you can actually download the transcript. So all of the juicy stuff that we got today, you can print that out and have. All right. Well, Andrea, thank you so much calling in from Italy, and Raewyn, I know you're in California, and I may just have to take you up on coming to visit. Especially, you know, like times in January when it's really in February when it's really super cold in Minnesota. Thank
You're
you.
more than welcome to definitely come out.
I love it. Thank you so much. And again, everyone, I'm Denise Siegel. I am your host here of Meaningful Conversations. We'll see you again next month, September. What did I say? September 12th?
Yeah.
September 12th at 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you so much. Bye.